So here we're going to be working on the cash budget. And the cash budget is a forecast of whether cash is going to be adequate at the end of each of the quarters. If it's not adequate, if on line 14 the cash surplus or the cash deficit is negative cash, that's a problem. Then we can borrow if this is negative, or we can repay loans if we have any, if there's a cash surplus. So by forecasting cash out, we can make decisions or assumptions about what's going on with what do we plan to do with any surplus cash, or how are we going to remedy if there's a shortfall in cash. So most of these amounts we're pulling from budgets we've already done. All right, so let's just see how this goes. Let's start with the beginning cash. The beginning cash in quarter one is on the balance sheet at the end of year 2. So we've got to go back to our original data. Here's your beginning of year 3. So the end of year 2 is December 31st. Is the same. The night of December 31st is the same as good morning, January 1st, year 3. Now receipts, you've got receipts on your receipts budget. Here are your receipts for the first quarter. So your cash you started with plus the receipts you expect to come in is the cash available to make all the payments that you're planning, that you've budgeted. So let's gather up those disbursements, fancy word for payments. Okay, so the payments for inventory. Let's go find that in our disbursements budget. All right, now let's go find commissions. It's going to be right on our disbursements budget. Packing supplies. Miscellaneous costs. I'm just linking here. I'm not typing anything in, so that if those disbursements on the prior tab move because of a change of assumption or change in activity or change in purchases, everything's going to update and flow through. For salary, right now we don't have any salaries, but if they did, they'd be in this cell, so I'll link to that cell. Now, interest payments. We can't figure that out yet because we don't know about borrowing. But we do know that at the beginning of the year, beginning of year 2, you've got student debt. And we do know an interest rate for that. So we do know the interest payments on the student debt. Now, if we're negative down here and we have to borrow some more, then interest might differ. But for right now, let's go look at that. Let's go look at our initial assumptions. So here is your student loans, $41,000, and the interest rate on the student loans is 1% per quarter. So for 41,000, 1% would be 410. But we're not going to type that in. We're going to point to it in case any assumptions move. Although that's not yellow, so it doesn't look like that's an assumption that's going to move. All right, so interest payments. Click on that times the interest assumption. There you go. Okay, so our total disbursements, it's going to be all of these. And then the cash surplus or deficit will be the available cash minus all the disbursements. So that was available for the payments. There's the total in payments. So we have 45,000 ending balance. So that's great. So we started with 15 by the time we collect and receive from customers, and by the time we pay for inventory and commissions and all these other things, we have 45,000. So that's great. We don't need to borrow. We got 45,000. In fact, we have 45,000. So maybe we should pay off that debt. That is up to you. This part down here is part of your strategy. So I'm gonna pay off the debt. But as I sit down and look at the other possible things that I do with the money, perhaps I might pay a salary and leave the debt. I don't know. Those are recommendations you're going to make with the owner. But I'm just going to show you what this would look like if you choose to do it. If you don't, then you there's nothing here, and ending cash would be $45,080. But if I pay off the debt, and actually I think I'm going to put the formula like this. So ending cash is the surplus that you have, plus any borrowing, well, we're not going to borrow, minus any repayments, well, right now we're going to repay, but you can change this by just deleting this here. So if we repay all the student debt in the first quarter, then we have $4,000 left over. And we started with the loan of $41,000, and we didn't borrow, but we did repay. And so the ending loan here, let's get the formula right here. It's not noticing that one, the whole thing. So debt is 0. That's my assumption, is that we use this to repay the debt. You don't have to assume that, but this is what it would look like if you did want to assume that. Okay, the beginning of quarter 2 is the end of quarter 1. So the cash that you had March 31st, the end of the first quarter, is the same cash April 1st when you came in the morning. And now we want to add receipts. So you can drag this over, or if you want, you can just go and click on and hit enter and link to it that way. So whatever you're most comfortable with. Available cash, I'm going to drag over here because the formula is the same regardless of the source of the data. So that looks like a pretty good month. All right, now for the disbursements. I'm going to, well, except for the interest payment because we paid off that loan, or I assume that we paid off the loan. You can make a different assumption. So I can drag these over because all the disbursements are arrayed for each of the quarters. So I don't have to worry about anchoring them on a particular assumption cell. So there's not going to be any interest payments because I have assumed that the debt is being repaid. So there's nothing down here to worry with. And the ending cash is this 140. So cash is looking pretty good. There's nothing to do down here because debt's wiped out. So quarter 3 will start with the end of quarter 2. The cash receipts, since they're all arrayed for each of the quarters, I can just copy them over. And then I can copy over this formula. Same thing with these. I don't have to worry with the interest payments because the loan is gone. I repaid it. I can copy these formulas over, or you can do them one at a time, whatever your comfort level is. Cash is looking great. Cash is looking great. So maybe you have some good news for these owners. So now I'm going to get super excited and just drag everything over. So this is some pretty great news. You've got $650. You're budgeting. You're expecting $656,230. All right. Now for the whole year, we don't add everything up. The beginning cash for the year is not the sum of the beginning of all the quarters. We started the year with 15,000. We have receipts equal to these 4 numbers. And available cash is the formula. It's not the sum of the available cash in each of the quarters. It's the beginning plus the year's receipts. And then here we can add up all the quarters for the payments. And then we can get the total of the year's disbursements. And then the deficit here is not the sum of these. It is the available cash minus the year's payments. I'm missing because we got to add these 2 things. These cells have to match. But I forgot about the 41,000. Now they match because the end of the 4th quarter is the same as the end of year 3. So this has to match, and it does. So there is your cash budget. So that will get you to thinking about how to respond to your owners about some of the questions that they had about the loan and about salaries and about expanding into the other product lines. We'll work on the income statement next.